Next, we are going to Sebastian Sanchez, staff attorney of the Employment Rights Project for Tzedek Legal Services. And Sebastian, we already have several questions about unemployment benefits for undocumented immigrants or people with ITIN or ITIN numbers. So I'm sure you're going to address those. Thank you so much, and please go ahead.
Thank you, Pilar. As Pilar said, my name is Sebastian Sanchez. And before I start, I did want to mention, as someone that came to this country as an undocumented immigrant, I'm eternally grateful for services like these that address issues particular to a community that is facing a particularly harsh conditions during the pandemic. So I'll start with the way I want to structure this talk is just go over some of the income replacement options that are available to workers, as well as some of the leave options that are available. And for each one, I'll touch on whether or not undocumented workers or people with ITINs are able to access those benefits. I'll start with unemployment insurance. So generally, unemployment insurance is a federally funded benefit that is granted through states. A state agency administers that. In California, it's the Employment Development Department. Unemployment benefits, generally to be eligible for those benefits, you have to have left your job by no fault of your own. And if it was a voluntary departure, you must have had some sort of good cause for having left it. You also have to be available to work, and you have to be able to work. And finally, you have to be looking for work while you're receiving unemployment benefits. You have to certify every 2 weeks that you are meeting these eligibility requirements. For undocumented immigrants, because they don't have employment authorization from the federal government, they are not able and available to work. So there is a strict limit. Undocumented immigrants, whether or not they've been paying taxes, whether or not they have an ITIN, are simply not going to be eligible for any unemployment benefits. This includes all of the supplemental benefits that were passed through the CARES Act, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. Right, that act provided 3 different additions to normal unemployment assistance. There's the pandemic unemployment compensation, which is the $600 additional per week that people receiving unemployment insurance will be receiving. I think that even though it took effect April 1st, it's only towards the end of this week that state agencies will finally be able to start delivering that payment to families. They had to wait for the Department of Labor to issue guidelines, which came out over the weekend. And now state agencies have to update their websites and their capacity to deliver this additional funding. There is the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation, PEUC. The CARES Act provided for 12 more weeks of unemployment insurance. Different states have different numbers of weeks that they provide unemployment compensation. California provides 26 weeks. So now workers will have up to 38 weeks where they can receive unemployment benefits. And finally, what the CARES Act added was the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. This extends unemployment benefits to workers that are previously excluded. That includes independent contractors, gig workers, who normally are not eligible because they are not leaving an employer. I do want to make clear that based on the AB5, the California law that was passed as of this year that implemented a very expansive test known as the ABC test, most gig workers, most Lyft, Uber drivers, most people that were previously considered an independent contractor were actually employees, and all those people should be applying for regular unemployment. EDD will make an evaluation as to whether or not a worker is actually an independent contractor or an employee. As of right now, similar to the additional $600, there is no guidance yet as to how that assistance will go out to gig workers. So we expect that there will be a severe delay before that money actually gets out to people who are not normally eligible for unemployment. Now, talking a bit more about what leave options and paid leave options are available to workers. So if, for most people, for most workers who are parents, schools have closed and childcare providers are simply not available for them. So they have to stay home to take care of their kids. there's unemployment insurance. They can apply for unemployment if they have to stay home and there is no one else, and they can certify that there's no one else available to take care of their children. They can receive unemployment benefits. There's also, normally there's the Family Medical Leave Act doesn't provide leave for a school closure, but under the FFRCA, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, that was enacted a few weeks back, the federal government added what is known as the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act. That's EPLSA. The Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act, what it does is it requires employers to provide up to 80 hours for full-time employees, so 2 weeks, 10 days of salary for workers that meet certain criteria. The amount of pay that they will receive, whether it's 100% or 2/3, will depend on the reason that the worker is leaving. So the 6 reasons, I'll try to summarize them as quickly as possible. If a worker is subject to an order to be quarantined or be isolated, which we have in California, or they've been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine, they're experiencing symptoms and are seeking diagnosis, they will receive 100% of their wages for that for those 10 days. If they are staying home because they have to care for some subject to an order, or they're caring for a child whose school has closed, or experiencing they term it a substantially other condition, then they will be eligible to receive 2/3 of their salary. Now, I will mention that the max benefit that people will receive if they're getting 100% of their regular wages is up to $511 per day. If they're receiving 2/3 of their normal wages, they can receive a max of $200 per day. Additionally, the FFRCA added what is known as the Emergency Family Medical Leave Act Expansion Act, the EFMLEA. This is another leave under the FMLA, which adds an additional 10 weeks of paid leave at 2/3 the rate of their regular rate of pay. And that's available if someone has to stay home because they need to take care of their child whose school or regular childcare is closed due to COVID-19. And this is a payment that only goes up to $200 per day. So you can't receive the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act, the EPLSA, and the EFMLEA simultaneously, but you can do it consecutively. So you can do the first 10 days under the EPLSA and then the following 10 weeks under the EFMLEA. I also want to note that under existing California law, there's the Family School Partnership Act, which guarantees parents protection, their job protection for up to 40 hours of work if an employer has at least 25 employees. And I'm sorry, I do want to clarify that under the FFRCA, the additional leave only applies to employers that have under 500 employees. And then employers that have less than 50 may be eligible to receive an exemption. And this is something that employers can actually self-certify that they are exempt from these rules, which has left out a tremendous amount of workers. And under the Department of Labor guidelines, they have additionally added that essential workers are also not necessarily eligible for this. So I believe the numbers are about 26% of workers are actually eligible to have these additional leave protections pandemic. I'd like to also mention state disability insurance and paid family leave in California. These are benefits that are fully state administered, and it's really important that undocumented immigrants be aware that they may be eligible for these benefits. If you have been paying taxes on the payroll, if your pay stub shows that you've been paying SDI or state taxes, you have been paying into this system, and you will be eligible as opposed to unemployment to apply for these benefits. Now, the problem is that the application forms require these workers to certify that they have a social security number. Most workers, undocumented workers that are working and receiving a pay stub are using either a fake social or someone else's social.
Hello?
And if they list that fake social or someone else's social, they will be held to have perjured themselves. So the Council for Undocumented Workers is use a paper application rather than the online form. Leave that social security number blank. And EDD will follow up with you and inquire and ask you to provide pay stubs and maybe your W-2 to show that you, in fact, were the person paying those taxes. State disability insurance and
Sebastian, please wrap up as soon as you can.
Sure. State disability insurance will provide and paid family leave will provide up to 2/3 of your wages for up to 12 weeks. So this is, if workers are currently employed and have to leave, this is a benefit that may be available to undocumented workers. And I'll stop there for now. Thank you.